we all know that in terms of the education sector, no, um, definitely, as discussed also in the previous topics beforehand, no, there is this introduction already of openness, having made the community aware through our educational sector. Technical topics that at first may sound challenging, no, especially to those who are already in their secondary education, um, even in the technical and the vocational sector, no. So in terms of how we support um, these sectors nowadays, no, what are the initiatives that each of your individual organizations are able to provide? Let's start off with that first.
Okay, now for the isip box, before we had the Kaisipan app or the isip box, we actually started using other platforms such as for synchronous sessions, we have Zoom and Google Meet. However, not everyone can join the sessions. For asynchronous, we actually partnered the Kaisipan have another partner. It's Pharmasuma. So we made use of the beacon. However, not everyone could connect with a web-based platform because it is Moodle-based. Um, Even if we have Spoodle, the partner is actually using a Moodle-based platform and not everyone have capability to connect with our modules for the digital capabilities because we are offering training programs for our educators to be able to at least help them or mitigate with the challenges being encountered during the pandemic.
Yes, go on.
And then we had the ISIP box that is actually anchored with or designed after the Ustad mobile. So it is mobile based and it can be actually a repository of different materials. However, the type of materials that can be uploaded are still limited. We only have PDF file types and EPUB, H5P, and limited types of documents could only be accessed with the device. I mean, the app.
Yes. Having said that, no, I think one of the important leaps and challenges that we have already experienced in the education sector nowadays, no, what was made more evident when, let's face it, when the pandemic hit, no. So, how did that major event, no, not just here in the Philippines, but international speaking, I mean, I can arguably say everybody here, no, already has experienced the impact on how education and how we learn and at the same time teach other people um, changed when it hit, no. So having said that, no, what breakthroughs or realizations in the education sector have was brought to your attention once again, especially when the pandemic hit, and how did it change the way we offer the courses to those who are interested to learn?
We actually have to partner with different institutions. Um, and some colleagues have been coordinating with Converge for connectivity. Some other schools are actually for state universities and DepEd had been providing connectivity to teachers. However, due to the laborious task being given to teachers, they are still having that difficulty on how to balance those training programs given to them, along with the tasks given to them as teachers, definitely for their own classes. And they have to prepare modules, the
Yes.
time allotment that they have to do with training programs, because not all are adept in what's this handling technological tasks as teachers. I mean, everyone was actually surprised. It came out that not everyone had been integrating ICT in their teaching. So um, and not everyone had been going for the 21st century learning skills,
Yes.
and it were all seen during that time. So it's more of trying to look into the cases. We have been conducting surveys from the different fellows that we have. And then from there, during the development of the courses that we have with ISIPBox, this data are being analyzed every now and then. But still, until now, even if we say that we are already in the post-pandemic, we still have that dilemma of even if we do think that we are providing help to our educators, they still have this difficulty of reaching out to their students, especially for those who are in the far-flung areas.
Understand, especially on those far-flung areas. No? Sirs, your thoughts?
So when the pandemic hit, obviously network infrastructure is a little bit more advanced in Japan. So I'm based in Japan. What really changed is actually the practices. So traditionally, when people join Rakuten Mobile, we have them go through certain amount of hands-on training, and obviously you can't do any of this when pandemic hit. So moving all of this into an online form has been or was a challenge, but at first we tried replicating the same thing on Zoom. Obviously that has huge limitations, but based on what we've learned from then, if you look at our onboarding, it's totally different. We've moved into this sort of system where it's no longer dependent on the room or the location. For example, like in traditional education, you need to be in the same room or just replicating it in an online form. But it's more interactive. It uses more e-learning content, so that then the person joining us can do the training when they need to do it. So that it's not just like this time only. However, then it also, just as in traditional educational cases, it proposes pedagogical questions on assuming, of course, internet availability, stability, which of course ORAN is going to be a huge help in that. But at the same time, the sort of assumption that everybody learns the exact same way, goes through the content same way, pays attention to the same things. That's something that I think every company in the world and every university, every education provider still needs to work on. We're still trying to implement the traditional methods of learning, but just moving it to an online context, which is, we have some assumptions that might not be true. But in that sense, I think the pandemic, if we try to look for something good in this, is definitely, it's a push for us to try and learn something new, learn something. Maybe there's a better way to do this. So it's been a learning journey, and it continues. Long way to say.
Well, we at the Department of Science and Technology Information Institute, actually, we are not what you call an educational company per se, because our primary mandates revolve around maintaining an S&T library and data bank, and promotion and communication aspect of S&T development. So what we have actually is a wealth of learning and knowledge content on S&T, on science and technology and related fields. Now, what we did more than 12 years ago was we embarked on a massive digitization drive wherein all our contents that are fit for digitization will be digitized and stored in PDF form. That way, these contents can be easily stored in a hard drive and then installed in a CPU. And our idea really was, to just put a dedicated uh, corner for our digitized content, and while people are uh, using our, basically it's an online public access catalog with additional content, they'll be having copies. So we came up with uh, the name Starbucks. So we had some wordplay in order to associate our name with the popular coffee chain. But since we launched it more than 11 years ago, we realized that we actually filled a need that was unattended for a long time because first and foremost, at the time that we launched Starbucks, a UNCD report came out wherein basically they said 76% of public schools in the entire Philippines have no internet connection. And because of that, they are at the other end of the digital divide. They're at the losing end. So when we launched Starbucks, little did we know that we'd be generating this much demand from a number of schools throughout the Philippines. And the demand grew and grew, so much so that we really had to keep up with the changes and developments, not only with the demand for Starbucks, but also the technological demand. So we it's kind of long story, but so please bear with me. So what we did was we began our online version of Starbucks. So when we started this, it was just for the purpose of monitoring our Starbucks usage among our Starbucks beneficiaries. But it's a good thing that the content we have in Starbucks offline is also found in Starbucks online. And little did we know that on 2020, the pandemic will strike. So everything will have to pivot towards what you call the new normal. So when that happened, we were already ready with the online version for Starbucks. So we shifted, we shifted our attention, and uh, we informed our beneficiaries that we have an online version for Starbucks that could be used by our remote learners, especially in the remote areas. Now, what really made this very successful is that uh, there was this early adoption among students because Starbucks in itself is very user friendly. It's not really difficult to use. But again, the problem lies in the limitation of our networks. Not all students, even in the most remote areas, will be able to access Starbucks. So I think that is the sticking point for us right now.
I'll just add to that. Before we had the ISIP box, Kaisipan actually have an MOU with Starbucks so that the courses for the digital capabilities can be uploaded in their device, and it could still reach the different areas where Starbucks is actually launched. As of the moment, the ESIP box is not yet fully launched because we are still into improving the app so that teachers and students can use it even offline. So since it is based on the design of Ustad Mobile, teachers could actually create their courses and communicate with their students even offline for the access of the modules and other learning materials. However, definitely for chat or the messaging features of the app, connectivity is really important. And it's really one great challenge if there is no connectivity, because Sir Alan have already mentioned that in our country, and that is undeniable, that we really have a great problem as to connectivity. And our target are really teachers and learners in the far-flung areas who doesn't have connectivity.
And going on connectivity, I'd also raise just device availability, because a lot of the content that we have is replication of slides, replication of decks that we created for classroom situation. A lot of it is, here's a 200-page book, please read it. But we have these computers that can do a lot more. And now pandemic has given us a good incentive to think, how could we also take some of this content and make it into a different form? Maybe, for example, creating some interactivity, especially for, well, remote locations, being able to push that mobile first aspect, being able to create learning environments that are mobile friendly is going to be huge. Like personally, and I see this is where we would need to pay a lot of attention. Of course, it requires investment. It requires, as academics and as educators, it requires skills that we don't have. I don't know how, like when I started at this company, I didn't know how to do a lot of the programming that I know how to do right now. But being able to push those skills into the communities, being able to push that from the core content creators into a situation where anybody can create, be it university level, be it kindergarten level, like all of these tools, if they are made available and if the connectivity is there, we could see tremendous outcomes. But it requires investment. It requires both public and private investment into the community. But I really see, especially for the Philippines, that mobile first aspect, because who here, or all of us probably have a laptop, but most people don't. And when we create the policies, we have to be mindful of that mobiles are everywhere. Laptops, computers are not.
Exactly. Actually, if we are to put at it on another perspective, right, it seems like in the education sector, especially, Open RAN here plays more of like a twofold functionality. One is educating the people, informing those students, those teachers as well, educators about the technology, while at the same time trying to implement the technology itself as a use case for not just in the education sector field, but to all of the fields. In fact, arguably, we can say that education in itself is an umbrella term that covers almost all of the topics and fields that we have right now. I mean, we won't be having doctors, we won't be having engineers at play if they did not go through education, right? Arguably so, right? So, having said that, I think we're opening now the floor. There might be some questions in the audience right now. Richard?
Hello. Okay, Tiberius. I have one colleague here that would like to share about the Project Rain and involvement in Starbucks. This is Sir Kong.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi, Sir Alan. So actually the Project Rain is heavily involved in the education sector and trying to provide these educational or digital resources to those communities that were mentioned far-flung or don't have access to traditional ICT infrastructures. No? So we and Starbucks, we've hosted Starbucks content and a lot more content in other forms, videos, APKs for those mobile devices, as most of the users are, as mentioned, have mobile devices. And these schools that we go to are actually trying to transition or actually implementing smart TVs in the room. So that's also probably another avenue to how to evolve the content to accommodate those devices for these schools. No, so I'd like to just share one of the schools that me and the Project Rain and Starbucks have been involved. Is that this schools that was given a Starbucks kiosk, where a kiosk is actually 1:1. So one kiosk is to one student. And with Project Rain as the platform for distribution, we've opened up the Starbucks content to, if not all, most, if not all, the students that were in that school. So thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
and I'm gonna jump on that anyway. So, and that resource availability is key because ultimately, let's face it, math is same everywhere where we go. Yeah, tech is same everywhere where we go, but the resource availability, especially in your native languages, is very, very critical. So I'm from Finland. We're a very small nation next to between Russia and Sweden and Scandinavia. We're like 5 million. When I went to university, like native English is required. There are no textbooks in Finnish in IT. And knowing that Southeast Asia has a lot of local languages, but if the resources are not available in a language that most speak, it doesn't matter how much we invest unless there is localization. And ultimately, we really need to keep in mind that technology and mobile phones are a way to deliver that, but they're a means to an end. We really need to focus on making sure that the end goals are done.
So what we did at DOST STII is that we actually capitalized on the ongoing pandemic to launch mobile app versions of our Starbucks. So we actually came up with 3 mobile apps. So we have the mobile app version for Starbucks. The second one is the GeoMap, the Starbucks GeoMap. So what the Starbucks GeoMap does is that it actually pinpoints the number of Starbucks sites in any given locale. Like for example, here in Quezon City or in Dumaguete, or if we narrow it down further into the more remote reaches in the villages in Sulu or Tawi-Tawi. So we need to create this mobile app in order to avoid any replication as far as a Starbucks installation is concerned. And number 2, if our congressmen and senators would like to know how many Starbucks sites have been installed in my district, we would at the moment's notice be able to identify the Starbucks sites that we have installed there. And then the third one is that we actually gamified the experience of using Starbucks. So we came up with Starbucks quiz. So the questions that come out in our Starbucks quiz are basically based on the content that we have in Starbucks. So we classified the questions according to elementary, high school, and college. And it comes in sets of 10. We actually debuted this in Beijing right in 2019, right before the pandemic. And it was a big hit at the Beijing International S&T Fair because a number of students, even professionals, would really take a crack at scoring 10 out of 10. I think the highest that was scored during our stay in Beijing was 8 out of 10. But it was a hit. It was a very big hit, and it continues to be very fun and engaging for students. So it's a good thing that I think one opportunity that arose during the pandemic is that it forced us to come up with new uses for our existing content. So that's one thing that I want to tell you.
Thank you, sir. Just to differentiate it also with the content of the ESIP box, the content is actually created, or I mean, first is consolidated by educators who are undergoing the training of the digital capabilities. Let's say they are being trained into the OER, and then these are uploaded. That's the first launch of the ASIP box, wherein the trainers are asked to upload their materials from these OER resources or different sources that they were able to align in the filter from those several resources or materials that they were able to collect. That's the first stage. And then the move of Kaisipan is to go for the I learn is second is I create. So these teachers are now to be asked to create their own materials in reflection with the DepEd Commons. And then when they would be creating their own content, they would be sharing it. And then we're going to make use of the ESIP box so that there would also be a wider community of teachers, and hoping that even students would be added in that community for sharing of these resources with the repository and LMS. Oh, by the way, ESIP box is also in the direction of being an LMS. But initially, we started with it as a repository first, but it is already on the process of on its second launch, hopefully, to be an LMS. And yeah.
Yeah, and building on that, like especially the OERs are extremely critical, and well, everybody knows that LLMs and AI is coming up huge. A lot of that, especially for quiz functionality, would be fantastic. Like you have these OERs already created, run them through an AI model, have infinite number of questions, of course, with the AI caveats of let's be careful and not do dumb things with this. But there's all of this, like imagine the impact you could have on learning when you do, or for example, when I was doing my PhD, put that paper into a question creator. I can test myself if I understood actually what is being said in the article. So there's a lot of this sort of future capabilities that we could do, especially now that we're slowly moving into a world where mobile is first. And especially this sort of, if we could get a little bit more, I guess all companies, all institutions, like if we have a little bit more resources, imagine with what you could do with rapid development, rapid testing of prototypes, figuring out, okay, this design works, this education system doesn't work, or this way of showing content works okay, but this way is better. Same with, as you mentioned, analytics. Like there's so much we could do. There's so much potential in this. And I do feel that pandemic was a good wake-up call for all of us. It's just that it takes time. None of these topics are easy.
Yeah, so totally agree. Yes, Richard, I think there were some clarifications or questions.
There's a question. Ayun, magawa na yung
Pati yung mic brain dead. I hear a lot of talk about content as though education is all about content. But we know, I've heard about quizzes, pop quizzes and so on, which is one kind of student engagement activity. What I'd like to do is to ask Liberius to actually talk about his experience of asynchronous activities, the engagement activities that have been included in the Aura courses. Thank you.
Okay, so it's my turn, by the way. So, okay, so well, perhaps I'll just give a quick run through on what we have in store for the students, no, in Open Run. So, as Maria mentioned, no, this is actually a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous engagements that we have in Open Run. Well, for myself specifically, I'm one of the co-creators of one of the foundational courses. It's actually the OpenFlow, SDN, and NFB foundational course. And although it's a technical course, majority of the contents there, it covers a lot of the bits and pieces about these said technologies. No, it supports Open Run in a way that although we have here's my industry hat speaking, no, in telecommunications, no, Open RAN is primarily on the wireless access sector, right? So this is the domain closest to the subscribers, no. While for myself in the industry, in Globe Telecom, I'm actually on the core network and focusing more on core services. And regardless, no, we support Open RAN in a way that SDN, NFV, OpenFlow, these are technologies that essentially allow the services that pass through Open RAN and make the communication of subscribers and make these services available also to subscribers. No, there are already some talks and engagements about cloudification, software-defined networking, software-defined programming, and these are the domains what we would be covering on. No? The course that I have prepared personally, no, it contains a mixture of synchronous and in the synchronous sessions. No, by the way, this is not just my own creation personally. I also have here Noel Campo as my co-creator as well. So could you stand up also there? Make yourself recognized as well. No? There. So we are the two heads between this course, and the topics that we have primarily covered there are for the three. In terms of engagements, it's also a mixture of videos, video recordings, lectures as well. And I just want to also emphasize it here that this is not just about forgive my wording, dumping information to our students just as is for you to memorize, for you to get acquainted of, right? So we have, I think in pedagogy, if I'm not mistaken, we have this hierarchy that we follow that the level of understanding and comprehension doesn't just rely on memorizing key terms and terminologies that definitely for technology, for the technology sector is we're all too aware of, right? It's not enough for us to just understand and to memorize a term, right? Because let's put it this way, it's pretty shallow if we just know the term, what is virtualization, right? But to put it one step further, how do we apply virtualization in the field where we are right now, right? And in our course, no, well, also made possible by Rakuten Learning Hub, no, we included also additional materials there for simulation. So as much as possible, we want to give students also a hands-on experience on, okay, so we're learning about virtualization. So it's okay that we understood the topic, but for it to really drive it home, they also need to practice virtualization. They need to see it firsthand. No? So that's why in our course specifically, we included there a small section wherein students would be given the opportunity to say install a hypervisor in your machine, right? Get acquainted with what's called, if you're familiar with VirtualBox, this is actually one of the open source tools that's available right now. You can install it into your PC and you can essentially run virtual machines there. So you can already practice, tinker with it. So I believe that you can learn by doing. I mean, it's better if you can develop that hand-eye coordination as well. So that's one virtualization. Then for SDN part, no, we included there, if you're familiar with Mininet, this is also an available open source tool. It now gives you an opportunity to also simulate what does an SDN environment look like, but in a localized setting in your laptops. Right? So I'm a firm, having also been in the education sector for, oh God, more than, I think it's already in a decade already, So that's one of the issues that we are also facing, because for students to better understand a given topic, it's better if they also practice it, right? So shout out to my co-faculty in FEU if you are here, hello also. Hi, hola. So there, I think that's my 2 cents in this topic. Yes.
I'm gonna jump on this again. And it really is, especially for ORAN, because if you consider traditional infrastructure for telecom, you needed to buy everything from essentially one place or a handful of places. You couldn't mix and match. Whereas now with Open RAN, it is going to be possible. So in a sense, we're opening up those gates into learning. Then the next step is to make sure that now that you have the information is available, people actually can utilize that. And unfortunately, there's an opportunity for whoever wants to starts pushing that, because ultimately education is not about rote memorization. It's about how can I use this? How can I practice this? And especially for IT industries, it is, you can learn things in minutes and you can be utilizing them in 5 minutes. Like if I don't know what a hypervisor is, give me 5 minutes, watch a micro learning, put it into place. And that's also one of the things that applies into overall education. Like previously when I did university, or when I was at university, we always had those 2-hour lectures and then you'd have a demo possibly. But maybe there's a way to increase interaction in the class. Maybe it breaks down into a little bit more of a master apprentice kind of situation. I don't know. It could, like, all of this is very interesting situations that we could explore.
I do agree with what was said on the connections that we have now, because based on survey, there are several teachers and students who do not really have connection at home because of the price. And if they would be, ORAN would be introduced to them, definitely, probably they would be open to having remote classes, considering that DepEd has just started this year on being open to homeschooling. And we cannot make use of the app if they do not have connection at home. And generally would still want to go back to face-to-face classes or sessions. And for college students or for the HEIs, especially in our locality, there are several students who went for working in while studying, and some of them have dropped. So they are really open for remote schooling if only they would understand what ORAN is. Some colleagues are still not aware what ORAN is, even if we are already in the IT field. So yeah, probably Sir mentioned a while ago on we have to give the skills first.
Well, especially given that Southeast Asia is very Like you have a lot of islands, so getting that infrastructure in place is critical, and ORA is critical in getting that. But we have to make sure that it gets into place. We have to make sure that the applications are also in place, and this is where you guys, as the local influencers, are extremely critical. Because even if, for example, Rakuten has interest in coming and trying to build something, but we need you guys to be the source of wants. You need to influence the government. You need to influence the public discussion, because ultimately it's about making sure that we communicate this correctly. We can't just be talking about ORAN if it's extremely technical, because the audiences won't understand. We need to be careful when we talk to press. We need to be careful when we talk to governments to make sure that they understand, why is it that we're talking about this? Why is this critical? What's the ROI on this? And what's the impact on the income level of the country?